Hello everyone. I came to the Saronam New Start Center to get rid of my bad habits. Now I'm confident that those bad habits are far away from me and I'm doing well. I was addicted to internet, games, and especially pornography. I used to watch these videos several times a day if I had nothing else to do at home. Why? Because this gave me the greatest pleasure and joy. When I first came here, I didn't have a sense of reality. I felt like I was blocked by some invisible wall, and my life seemed like a dream which I will wake up to in one day. Also, I couldn't feel any feelings as well. When an emotional situation occurred, I understood it with my head, but I couldn't emphasize in my heart. When my mom was crying because of me, my head seemed to understand the situation that she must be sad about me. But I couldn't empathize with her or have any sympathy for her feelings. She asked me, "Do you know what you just did?" Yeah, I did something wrong. It was all my fault. But I didn't feel that what I did was really wrong. Because I was controlled and dragged by Satan for a long time, my senses disappeared. So I didn't feel the need to change, and I thought I was comfortable living just like that. And I thought about the happy moment in my life. Playing with friends, being with family, and going on a trip. However, this did not make me happy. I was not able to recall the moment when I felt happy. Since I couldn't find the joy anywhere else, I think I became more addicted to games and pornography that stimulated my peripheral nerves and brought some pleasure. As a result, naturally, I lost the sense of reality and all other senses. I was alive, but I did not feel like I was alive. My self-esteem was low, and I was always depressed and angry. My conscience was insensitive, so I lied a lot, and I got annoyed just by some words from my mom. Sometimes I thought about the end of my life, but it was just for a moment. I was bound by the Satan's golden chains and continued to follow my sinful habits. And I had become very lazy. If I was a high school student, I would have been somewhat restrained because I had to go to school and study. But as soon as I started college, I stayed at home almost all the time due to COVID-19, and I finished a week's worth of classwork on Sundays and spent the rest of the time in vain. Once, when I took an online test through Zoom, I placed the cheating sheet on the blind spot of the camera and wrote the answer. I had no conscience, right? But at that time, I didn't feel guilty about that. And when my colleagues complained about it, I thought, why don't you do the same, idiots? As a result, my conscience, morality, future plans, senses, happiness, all of these things disappeared, and I only craved for pleasure. The only thing that left behind were depression, anger, discouragement, anxiety, and pride. During these months, I used to go to bed at 4 a.m. and woke up late. I fell into the pit that Satan had dug, and was falling deeper and deeper. In the meantime, I came to the center, this Serenam New Star Center, by the guidance of God, and I was able to change. Without knowing that all my negative thoughts were actually inserted by Satan, I accepted them, took it to action, and the result was what I was then. So, whenever those thoughts were about to come into my mind, all I had to do was call upon Jesus' name. So I started the war on thoughts and emotions that came into me day by day. It was hard to fight against the lust of my body because sometimes the thoughts and emotions brought me some pleasures again. But my life had to go on. If I didn't cut off all the negative thoughts, my life would be over. Whenever a strong temptation came into my mind, I earnestly called Jesus for help. The number of times in which the negative thoughts come into my mind gradually decreased, and now such thoughts rarely come into my mind. Now the images that brought me pleasures are not pleasures anymore. I believe that the connection of my brain nerves has actually changed. And I had another problem, which was about emotions. I easily became emotional when I was talking with people or fell deeply into the unnecessary thoughts. When I fell into depression or anger, unkind words came out of my mouth against my will, and I became so skeptical about people I saw. Other people's motives for action seemed evil, so I hated them, and swear words came out of my mouth. Once I became emotional, I couldn't get out of it easily, even if I cried out to Jesus and praised and prayed to Jesus. Still, the Holy Spirit worked strongly on me, so I was able to overcome the crisis. At first, I was immersed in emotions for 10 days, but then 5 days, 3 days, 1 day. The number of times I was immersed in emotions gradually decreased, and now I rarely become emotional. There's nothing to be stressed about. Really, I have nothing to be stressed about. Now I'm back to the normal person. I don't easily fall into emotions such as depression and anger. My senses have returned. I can feel my emotions well. My conscience has become more sensitive, and my self-esteem has improved. I've made plans for my future. My concentration has improved. My thinking has deepened, and I can always live with peace in my mind. I am positive that I'm happy. Now, just hearing the story of Jesus' love brings tears to my eyes. It is different from the tears that I had before when my mom cried before. The tears I had before were tears without empathy or sympathy. But the tears I have now are from the bottom of my heart, which my head does not understand because it is from the emotion I never had. It's really different, so different. God changed me, who was a subhuman. The only thing that I did was just calling upon Jesus' name. But He changed me this way. So I will never forget my Lord. When my condition improved and I gained confidence that I'm saved, I was so thankful that I cried a lot. But again, Satan didn't miss any opportunity and gave me a test. I thought, my life is full now, then why should I continue this hard fight? Isn't it okay to just compromise a little now? I finally understood why 9 out of 10 lepers went away even after being cured by Jesus. After they regained life, the temptations of the world must have seemed bigger. In fact, Jesus has much bigger and better things. I almost made a compromise, but until I'm born again, there's no guarantee that I will not go back to the past. So I decided to move forward with goal of new birth. And God must be preparing for me a greater grace than the grace that had saved me from evil habits. But would I fall for the temptation that seems to be big just right now? When I picture myself after accepting the temptations that are currently being presented to me, that the things God tells me to abandon, it's terrible. Eventually, I would go back to the past. From my experience, I believe that God does not ask me to throw away anything that is useful to me. So, I decided to go forward to receive the more grace. I thought about why I fell into such a bad habit. Come to think of it, as the director said in the lecture, I wanted to have some joy. But I couldn't be fully joyful in the relationships with people and with God, so I think I became more addicted to media to get that joy. At school, I was always intimidated and anxious by the age problem. And at home, I was very stressed out in relationships with my mom. I hated the atmosphere of my house, feeling like I was in the kingdom of a dictator who is my mom. And I hated hearing negative words. I hated my mom's oppression, obsession, annoying tone, and forcing me to give in. My mom knew all my schedules, so if I didn't come home on time, she would call me and rush me to come home right away. If I say I'm going to play a game with friends, she gets upset and tells me to come home. Even if I didn't like it, I obeyed her for some time. But when she kept on calling and checking on me, I ignored the calls and just played games. Then we started fight again. In the conflict with my mom, I had never won once, just once. If I don't apologize to my mom for what I have done, she would take it out on my father and brother. So my father just comes to me and asks me to apologize to mom. I didn't want to say sorry because I didn't do anything wrong. So then why? My mom always forced me to go to church. Even if I go to church, I would just fall asleep. Then why do I need to go to church? It's much more enjoyable to play games for the time. I hated being forced to go to church at that golden time when I can have some other joy. Believing in God didn't help me at all. There were too many restrictions for me. And when I look at the believers, they were no different than non-believers. For instance, just looking at my mom, She gossiped about the church members just like non-believers. I couldn't find the reason to go to church and believe in God. As I was stressed out by the issue of God, church, and His people, I hated to have faith, and I said, "Where is God?" So I turned to games that gave me joy and pleasure. But as my mom didn't let me do it, I got stressed out again, and I looked for all sorts of ways to get away with it. A vicious cycle was repeated. However, as I came to this center, I became to understand my mother's inevitable situation. So the relationship with my mom was restored. And I clearly realized why I have to go to church and why I have to believe in God. My mom was also a poor spirit who had been deceived by Satan and lost her connection with God. My mother spitted out all the thoughts and emotions which Satan inserted to her. She loves me, but she didn't know how to give love to me. I considered my mom's gestures out of her love negative because Satan made me to misunderstand her. I came to know that I closed the door of my heart by choosing Satan. When I first came here, I didn't want my mom to sit next to me, talk about me, and take care of my stuff in the room. I wondered why her way of speaking is always annoying. But now, being with mother, I'm so happy and comfortable. Now I know that she loves me so much. Believing in God is the most right and the happiest way. This is the reason I found why I have to believe in God. Not distorted happiness, but true happiness. It doesn't bring me the stimulating or intense joy, but I can live in peace without mood swings or stress. It is hard when I have to surrender myself, but I can live much more comfortably and happily after myself is surrendered to God. It is the only way that I can live with peace and joy. I looked for God conditionally only when I have the thorn and realized I would die if this was not removed. But from now on, I will live with faith by looking up to Jesus consistently to get the greater grace and happiness that God will pour on me. Thank you.